This show has really gone quickly. I'm very impressed with my next guest because, to me, he's doing to the real estate industry what Uber did to the taxi cab industry and Netflix did to the video industry. Alex Doubet is my guest. He is the CEO and founder of doorhomes.com. Welcome.
That's right. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, so talk about your model and how it differs from the traditional real estate model.
Sure. So Door is what's called a flat rate brokerage. We are a tech-enabled residential real estate brokerage, and we charge a flat $5,000 at close, regardless of the price of the house, for full service. And sometimes folks ask or think that sounds like a lot of money, but keep in mind, if you're selling a $300,000 house, for instance, generally speaking, you're paying $18,000. On a $500,000 house, you're paying $30,000, and it goes up from there. So 6% is the customary commission structure in this country. And the U.S. and Canada are the only two first world Western countries where that's the case. It generally costs 2% or less in Western Europe, for instance.
But so I'm trying to do the math for you. It seems like sometimes you're putting in a lot more work than $5,000, isn't it?
As the brokerage?
Yeah.
You know, I think the real fallacy of the space is you hear so many real estate agents label themselves as luxury real estate experts and that sort of thing. And the truth of the matter is it doesn't cost any more money to sell $1 million house than it does a $200,000 house. And going back to the beginning of the company, I started the company because my mom sold her house where we'd grown up right off Snyder Plaza in UP, if you know that area.
Sure.
And she paid $50,000 to an old-fashioned real estate agent, and she didn't get a thank you note or a bottle of wine, nothing at close. And I just thought that was a presumptuous, unfair transaction. But more importantly, she had lived there for 20 years. We'd grown up there. And just like anyone has lived in their house and paid for the taxes and the maintenance and the insurance. And I don't think it's right for a real estate agent just to come in and de facto lop 6% off the top of the sale price when you go to sell. The way people tend to think about this, I think, is incorrect, too. It's 6% of the gross sales price. That tends to be a much larger piece of your home equity. That's what really gets me going here is if you're selling your home, like if I sold my home and paid 6% commission, that'd be 30% of my home equity. I just don't think that's right.
Got it. So when you first went to market, are you at the point where you're having to educate the market on why your model is better?
I think a little bit. There's some education. I think what we've learned, when I started the company, I thought this was going to be all millennials all the time. I'm a millennial. Millennials are the biggest home buying population right now, biggest generation in American history. But on the other end of the market, you have baby boomers as the biggest home selling market right now. And that is the second largest generation in American history. And what surprised me, I think, was as it turned out, our average client actually has been 40-plus years old. They've sold a house before, and I think the reason is they've looked at the closing disclosure and they've said, holy cow, what am I paying all this money for? And I think what that's indicative of is this idea that the value you get is divorced from the price that you're paying.
Right.
That's what a lot of people feel. And the folks that have been our best clients, I think, are the ones who have looked at the closing disclosure, they've felt that feeling, they've seen what we're doing, and they've said, I want that.
And I have to, my daughter's a millennial. Millennials love transparency, and there's something very transparent about your model, isn't it?
100%. And I think from the beginning, that was something I was very big on, is I want transparent pricing. You mentioned Uber earlier, much more transparent pricing than a taxi cab. I think that is the way that the world is going, largely because of the internet and the effects of that technology on many different business spaces.
And right now, are you just selling homes in the DFW area, or are you thinking about national?
Yes and yes. So the bulk of our transactions have been in Eastern DFW. We launched back in Q4 of 2015. We did our first transaction in early 2016. And since then, we've sold right around $100 million in real estate.
Wow!
So thank you. I think are the fastest growing brokerage in Dallas right now. But Dallas County, Collin County, those have been the bulk of our transactions. We're on the cusp of opening up an office over in Fort Worth, and so we've done quite a bit of business in Tarrant and Denton counties, and we'll now have an office over there so that we can hopefully grow that business. But to your question, from the beginning, this has not been a plan to just stay in Dallas or even in Texas. Austin or Houston would probably be the next markets, but certainly want to take this as a national venture. I think, well, there's somewhere between $60 and $70 billion in commissions paid every single year by homeowners in the country.
Right.
And that is far too high in my view.
Are you looking for more agents? Is that part of the goal? And telling your story to the agent, is that complicated?
You know, one of the questions I get a lot is, why would an agent come work for you? And my answer is always, I don't want them to come work for us. And my model from the beginning has been, I want to find a great person, a smart person, hire them, and train them to be a great real estate agent at door, because it's a very fundamentally different model. They're not independent contractors. They're employees. The average agent in DFW does 3 transactions per year. Our agents average north of 4 per month. And so you get a much better professional at door, someone who does this day in, day out, full time. But I think finding a great real estate agent in the existing pool is finding a needle in a haystack. I would rather find a great person and train them to be an agent in our model, because they don't have bad habits, they don't have any preconceived notions of what the economics should be, those sorts of things.
Wow, that's fascinating. How many agents are working with you right now?
We've got about 14 employees now.
Wow. And if I'm doing the math right, your agent can often make more than the typical agent.
100%. In fact, double.
Really?
The average agent, the kind of the dirty secret in the industry, despite all the HGTV $1 million listing shows, the average agent makes somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000 a year, depending on the source you look at. And there's kind of this joke of what do real estate agents do? They drive for Uber. And the reason is, if you're doing 3 transactions a year, that's not a full-time job by any stretch. And so I always caution people, if you're looking to buy a house, so I should mention, on the buy side, we give you money back if you work with us. So any commission we receive above $5,000 goes back in your pocket. So if you're buying a $300,000 home, we're giving you back $4,000. But I would just caution anyone buying or selling a home, I think it's a risky choice to look in the traditional pool. At least come talk to door, because you get a great agent, again, someone who does this full time, and someone who has a much broader swath of market expertise, but also much more experience negotiating and so forth. So in addition to saving people money, we negotiate better on the buy side. We sell your home for more on the sell side.
What's your passion? I mean, what do you love most about your company?
I've been kind of a personal finance nerd for my whole life. I don't know why. And that story that my mom experienced, where she sold a house, paid $50,000+ and didn't get so much of as a thank you note, that ticked me off. And I think this is perhaps most illustrative of what drives me here. We did this analysis of 2 people in their mid-20s, so millennials, buying and selling the same value home 5 or 6 times throughout their life. One guy uses door, one guy uses a traditional agent. The guy that uses door takes the refund we give him on the buy side or the savings on the sell side, dumps that into an index fund in the S&P. By the time they retire, the guy that uses door has a net worth $1.4 million higher by making that one change.
Wow.
And I think, to your earlier point about transparency of pricing, I think that the pricing in this space has been kept perhaps deliberately opaque. And I think that people don't really realize how much wealth they're giving up when they're buying and selling homes and paying 6% every single time.
Do you feel like the model that you're using will eventually eclipse the traditional real estate model?
100%. And I think when that change starts happening, it's going to be much quicker than traditional agents and traditional brokerages would assume. And I think one thing that's become clear in the past decades is that when industries change, when the taxi cab industry changes, when retail is happening right now with Amazon, when hotels change with Airbnb, it doesn't happen on the scale of 50 years anymore. It happens in 5 or 10 years.
You know, we always talk about the greatest generation being, you know, our grandparents. I think there's a greatness to the millennials where you're looking at something that has always been done this way, and where the boomer might say that's the way it's done, the millennial says, but why?
Yeah, I think that's very much the case, and there's certainly an element of thriftiness, I think, to the generation, the baby boomers. They grew up in that with that thrift as a big part of how they were raised. But I think you're right. Millennials, or at least the folks that I know who are my age, we're always looking for a better way to do something. And I hope that as we grow, as we continue to get bigger, as they're researching this space, the traditional paradigm is you talk to a friend or family member or a referral from a friend or family member, and you choose your agent. I would hope that they do a little more research, visit our website, and at least let us throw our hat in the ring, because it's a much better financial outcome.
Okay, what's your website?
www.doorhomes.com.
And your mom has to be tremendously proud.
She tells me every day.
Well, you're amazing, and I hope you'll come back as a guest, because you've been a great guest.
I'd love to. Thank you.
All right, and that's it for the Jeff Crilley Show. We'll see you all next week.